And a very warm welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk coming to you live on LinkedIn. I'm so glad that you are taking the time to join us today on the International Women's Day. Now, you have seen people do this sign. Do not wonder about it. They're not doing Wakanda Forever. No, we are not doing Black Panther here, but actually that is the sign for breaking the bias. Break the bias, that is the theme of this year's International Women's Day. And that is what we are here to talk about. Now, brief information about myself. My name is Liz Shoo. I'm a journalist and a presenter. I work for Germany's international broadcaster Deutsche Welle, and I also work for the German public broadcaster WDR. Now, before we proceed, just a quick word on the fact that we are aware of what is happening in Ukraine. We are aware of the situation there, of the war that is raging there. And there actually was a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth on whether we should continue with this talk that has actually been in the making for months and months. We decided to go ahead with it, also being aware of the fact that most of the people who are fleeing from Ukraine are actually women. On this International Women's Day, it is our duty to talk about the issues that are facing women, but of course it is our hope that the war and the situation there, that it improves sooner rather than later. All right, we are here to talk about biases. They can be conscious, they can be unconscious, and many women have faced different types of biases, especially in their professional careers. So that is what we will be discussing today with women who have a lot of experience, and we want them to really share with us what they have faced and how they overcame different types of biases. And of course, we do not only want you to be viewers, we actually want you to be active participants. So feel free to join the discussion. I will give you time to later ask your questions, and then we will get into the discussion later. But first, I want to talk to my guests, and I have the honor of having three women here with me who are actually all members of the board of management of large German corporations. So first of all, here right next to me is Dr. Stefanie Coßmann. She is a member of the board of LANXESS, which is a chemical company based here in Germany, and also the labor director. Warm welcome to you, Stefanie.
Thank you.
All right, and next to Stefanie is Sucheta Govil. She is from Covestro, also a chemical company based here in Germany. And Sucheta, you are the Chief Commercial Officer of your company, also, of course, a member of the Board of Management. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
And right there next to Sucheta is Sarena Lin. She's also labor director for Bayer, which, or as in Germany, we say Bayer, and that is also a large multinational corporation based here in Germany as well. So I'm very happy that the three of you are here. My wish is that we have a very open discussion, that you really get to share details from your professional life, because I believe that many people who are watching, especially the women, they want to get something out of the talk today. So feel free to share examples and to be very open about what you have faced so that other people can learn from your experiences. All right, let's dive right into it. We want to start with one question that I want to ask each one of you. It's the same question, just so we get to know you a bit better and really the things that the challenges that you have faced. And I want us to talk about bias that you have faced in your professional life. Can you give us an example, and how did you react? Stefanie, I have to start with you. You're sitting right next to me.
Okay, no problem with that, Liz. Thank you. I think I've been pretty lucky throughout my professional life when I started my professional career, because from my professional background, I'm a lawyer. So I was really recognized for my expertise that I brought through my studies, and sitting at a negotiation table, there was no matter whether you're a female or a man. So that was really a lucky piece sometime. But then I took the function of the global head of HR within LANXESS, and by that time I was often asked the question of, can women do that? We are a chemicals company. Do you really think that females can do this or that? And I always said that
people would ask you directly.
Yeah, they would ask me directly, exactly. And I was saying, that's not the question. I mean, everybody can do everything, and that I can really say I was really lucky to be brought up by parents that always told me you can do everything. Whatever you do, you just need discipline and go forward and be courageous there. So I think personally I've certainly experienced this, situations where I experienced bias, but that was to a large extent really overwritten by my professional background and by my professional experience, and I'm very grateful for that, to be honest.
So at the end of the day, they did honor the fact that you actually bring the qualifications to the table that are needed for that job. Thank you very much. What about you, Sucheta?
It's interesting you should start the topic with biases. And I have to say, Liz, through my professional career of 3 decades plus, there are 2 kinds of biases that I've faced. One is the one with positive intent. And I think here it's always a little bit interesting because folks come in with the comment that they ascribe to you, but with a positive intent. So I have 2 boys, and at the time that I was expecting my 2 boys, both times, people would talk about, are you ready for this travel, let's say, or are you ready for this particular job because, you might want a slightly easier life or a more relaxed life. And I think those kind of positive biases, whilst at one level I appreciate the comfort and I appreciate the concern, already puts a presumption that you can't do something because of a physical condition.
So your colleagues they wanted to protect you, kind of?
I think they were being understanding. I think they were being understanding of my personal situation, but ascribing it to actions, which I may not have ascribed those actions to. So it was, I needed to react by being appreciative of that concern, but also being very explicit about what I could and couldn't do. And I think that explicitness helped me. It's the ones with the prejudices that really are more difficult to handle. And those prejudices sometimes are visible or sometimes invisible, a little bit like what Stephanie herself mentioned, questioning abilities, questioning experience. Are you ready to do it? Is the person fit for purpose? Being pretty explicit about some of those questions, especially since I don't have a chemical or an engineering background. And those are more difficult to handle, but you just need to, once again, be explicit. Surround yourself with fantastic people who can fulfill some of those gaps which exist and then move forward.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Sarena, what about you? Share experience with us, please.
No, I think, first of all, I think it's such a great opportunity to be here with my friends, Stephanie and Sue, and talk about this really, really important topic. I think to build on what we all shared common experience in terms of biases, I would add one aspect to it. To me, bias is both professional and also personal. I grew up in a very traditional Chinese family. And in a traditional Chinese setting, there are particular roles that's assigned to women versus men. For women, generally, it's at home. For men, it's generally working outside of family. For a working mom, actually the first bias I have to break through is in my personal mental bias as well as my family's bias. Wow, you'll be working full time. Who's gonna take care of your child? Your husband is working from home. How is it going to work out? And I think, to me, the first hurdle is that mental bias that we face both personally and also from a society perspective before we can start talking about professional biases that I think we all faced. And many of them, as Sue said, I think are unconscious, are unintentional. But it's one of those things where the intentionality, they build over time. And I think that it ultimately defeats the confidence that a lot of us have in terms of, do we really have a place in the professional world as women if these unconscious biases continue to build on each other, whether it's about child raising, it's about supporting the family in terms of in times of need. And I think a lot of these are both structural as well as psychological that we all have to break through.
Mm-hmm. I find it very interesting that you mentioned the issue of these mental biases, because that is something that I want to really focus on. There are, of course, things that come to us from outside that we don't have control over, but you talked about the mentality that we have, the psychology behind. And Sucheta, I just want to come back to you and ask you, okay, you said that maybe your colleagues thought, is she really able to do this and that job because she's expecting a child? What about you yourself, the demons within? Was there a time where you really doubted yourself? You said, okay, I'm in this very high management position. Am I capable of fulfilling the expectations that people have of me?
Well, wow. I mean, that comes through actually day in and day out. To date, it happens. But I'll relate a small anecdote, if I may, Liz. And that anecdote relates to a time a couple of decades ago. My second son was born. I was really physically tired. I was combining a very, very tough, physically and emotionally tough job. Travel, I think I traveled 200 days out of 365 that year, as well as looking after the kids and the home. I have to say, a fantastic husband who chipped in and all the stuff, but nonetheless, I was just physically tired. And I thought to myself, just give up, you know. You owe it to yourself. Maybe you should just give up. And I remember my mom, who actually wasn't an earning working woman, coming to me. And I was sitting there feeling very sorry for myself and wallowing in self-pity. And she basically served me a nice hot cup of tea and said, pull up your socks. Some of the men around you don't have that luxury of just saying, I'm physically tired and I should give up. And what gives you the right to have that luxury and just give up? You add value, you've got a support system, and maybe you just need to prioritize differently. Maybe you just need to delegate differently. Maybe you just need to empower differently and be explicit about what you can do and can't do. But this wallowing in self-pity and having the luxury to just give up whenever you are tired is not well worth it. My God, I pulled up my socks in a hurry on that one. And I think it cuts both ways, like Sarena said. There's a little bit of what's inside you. It's a little bit about what people expect.
Yeah, so kudos to the mom. It looks like we need the kind of people, the support system, like when we feel like mentally we're done, to have somebody to build us up. Now, I'm talking to 3 professional women who have made it to the very top in their companies. But then, when still staying on the issue of bias, are there some fields where we women feel like this is not the place for us? You said you do not have a chemical background, but still you had the courage to venture into a chemical company. But looking at statistics worldwide, only 30% of scientists worldwide are women. Your company in particular, if I take LANXESS as an example, I read that about 20% of the mid and senior management positions are held by women. But somebody might say, okay, that's not much, but on the other hand, you only have about 20% of the people that are working for you that are women. So is there a problem of even recruiting people for regular jobs, not management that we're talking about, when it comes to fields like chemical companies or pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, I think that really a couple of issues that come together at that moment in time, and we are deeply looking into that because we need to change. Yeah? For me, it's not just a question of empowering female, but it's really creating a resource we need to fill and recruit for the future, given the situation we are in, that we will not have enough people to fill the open positions that we will have for the future. That's one aspect. The second is, if I look into that, I often hear, people at the plants, they are shift workers, so that's nothing for female. And I always say, no, that cannot be, because if I go, for example, to hospitals, or if I look there, the nurses, 100% female. So, and they do shift work all the time. So that's a comparable position. So I say that cannot be, that this is the main reason why we don't have female in our plants. Second argument that always comes up is, it's very strong and heavy work that needs to be done. So they have big packs that need to be filled, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, we have fork drivers that take that stuff. And there's lots of digital work. So that's neither an argument. So there must be something else. And it comes with whether female do feel comfortable coming at the site where they see lots of men walking around, where they feel that there's prejudice still around of whether she can do that job or not. Fortunately, that is really changing, and we are working on that. And if I look at the number of female we have in management positions, that's much larger than the 20% you were making reference to. So we are filling up the pipeline, but that's absolutely necessary to really recruit for the future.
All right, and when you do talk to the women, I mean, do you get a lot of applications from women, or, I mean, how difficult is it to attract people to your company?
It depends on the position, definitely, and we need to have role models and strong symbols we send to the outside, saying, hey, you're really welcome, and that's an environment where you can feel safe and sound.
All right, I want us to talk about, again, it might be a mental issue about how women feel once they have reached some senior positions. Sarena, I want to ask you, studies show that women are put under a lot of scrutiny, more than their male colleagues. They feel like they have to give 150% to really prove that, okay, I am worth it, I'm able of fulfilling this assignment or fulfilling this job. Now, I'm looking at a person like you. You have credentials, you studied at Yale, you studied at Harvard, you've worked for multinational companies in different countries, you speak multiple languages, but still, has there ever been the question about, is she really qualified? How did she even make it here? Have you been asked that? I mean, directly or indirectly?
Well, I think I will build on some of the comments that Sue also just made. I think many of us, I remember very early on in my career, being in the very first management consulting project, I was sitting there across the table from a sea of men, both my colleagues as well as clients. And I looked at all these men being so eloquently talking about and arguing about their points, and I say, oh my gosh, I'm in the wrong room. I don't belong here. When are they gonna find out that I actually don't qualify for this job? And I didn't know what was called at the time. This is more than 25 years ago. Until many years later, I learned this is called the Imposter Syndrome. And I said, wow, that's what I feel. And not only sort of the psychological experience, but the physical experience of the anxiety that comes with it. And I will never forget that. And I realized a lot of it is the pressure that we put on ourselves because we have such a high expectation that we want to be perfect. And by the way, when I say we, imposter syndrome is not just on women. Yeah. I have many male colleagues and friends that say, gosh, we experience it too. But the society has taught us not to speak out about that. Yeah. So I realized that it is so important for me to have my own sort of mental build-up that when I'm in the role, because I am qualified to do so, right? Whether it's a voice from within, whether it's a voice from around me, I need to have that confidence myself that I can do this job.
So it's something that you also have to tell yourself regularly? Is that something that you two also experience, that you need to reassure yourself, no, I deserve to be here?
Oh, definitely, yeah, that sometimes comes. And it's just as you described, Sarena. I mean, there are situations where you're questioning yourself, am I really right here in that position? I remember a time when my kids were young, I was for a certain period of time working part-time. And then someone came to me and said, hey, what are you doing? You are working 100+%. So why are you on part-time? And I said, no, I'm not doing it. Yeah. So I had to question myself, what's going on? And that guy was right. Yeah. He said, I'm really working 100%, or like someone working 100%. But you definitely have to tell yourself, it's all right. It's okay. You do not need to have an alibi to go or to leave for having supper with your kids at night.
Yeah. But you know, Liz, I think also to your second part of the question, I think this unfortunately is a law of small numbers because there are few of us. So we are under the spotlight a lot, and we are being held as perfect role models, which is not fair for anyone. And I think this is something that, again, part of breaking the bias is, no, we have to consider all of us as normal human beings. We make mistakes just like everybody else, but we continue to grow and develop. And it is absolutely our job for those of us who are in a position to do so, to be able to support others. Again, men or women who say, no, you can do this, right? We need to bring everybody up so that there's not too few of us under the spotlight and always under that constant scrutiny, is this person perfect?
Thank you very much. And just a quick reminder to everybody, I'm supposed to turn to this camera. A quick reminder to everybody who is watching us on LinkedIn. We are talking about breaking the bias. Break the bias, that is the motto of this year's International Women's Day, and we want you to be part of the conversation. So feel free to ask questions. Today you have the privilege of being able to ask questions directly to 3 members of boards of different companies, Vorstand, for those who speak German. So really, you do not get these opportunities every day, so make the most of that opportunity. And of course, I will get to the viewer questions a bit later in the discussion. All right, now, the issue of children, of babies, has come up a number of times. I have specific questions about that, being a person who is a mother herself, who's expecting her second child. And I've heard a rumor a while ago, and this apparently applies to Germany, that the people that human resources officers are least likely to hire or do not want to hire are women in their 20s and in their 30s, because they either are expecting children, they will have children sometime in the future, or they already have children, and then there's the fear that, okay, she's gonna miss out, she's gonna call in sick, or the child is sick, or yes, now we've seen it with Corona, for example, that most of the time it was the women who had to stay home because the children were at home. So I have 2 labor directors here. You have to deal with employees. Tell me, is that true, or is that just a rumor?
My gosh, absolutely not, right? I think that would truly be a mistake if we end up judging women's potential, right? Because they are at a child-rearing age. I mean, if anything, I'm a mom, right? We're all moms here. We know how much having kids and family teach us in terms of human values, in terms of empathy. If anything, I would encourage companies to really help moms to be successful, both in terms of on-ramp and also off-ramp, so that they actually can enjoy those life experiences. That's absolutely critical for the society. So I would absolutely dispel that myth. I think if anything, we need to do more to support the moms who come back to work.
And fathers to support their wives, yeah?
Absolutely.
So that for me is also a very important aspect. So the more fathers also decide to take care of their kids or speak up openly about it also during their professional life, that will change the complete scenery. And I think that's really what we need, and what we need people or men to encourage for.
All right, I read a recent study from the UK that also says that 60% of the women who are already in the workforce, they decided not to apply for a new job or actually apply for a promotion because they felt like they have the responsibility of taking care of the children at home, or they have the responsibility of taking care of older parents. So is that also a type of bias that we women say, okay, I'm not even going to try because I feel like I will not be able to handle all these responsibilities that come my way? What is your take on that?
I think that does come about. I've spoken to many young women at various stages of their life, and the opting out, and Sheryl Sandberg, I think, talked a little bit about this, but this opting out before you need to opt out does come in. Should I really apply for this role? It's going to make a greater demand on my time, or I'll be sort of not fulfilling one of those roles, either personal or professional. And I think as managers, as organizations, as corporations, we need to spend time looking for skills, capabilities, and value additions which make women and encourage women to not opt out before they need to opt out, to listen to what they're not really saying, to make sure that they don't give the 10th reason why they're not fit for a role versus, just living up to the potential which they're really darn good at. So yes, I've seen this happen many times, and it's our responsibility to make sure we harness that pool, because that's a fantastic pool of people that we need to harness. They bring in their experience, they bring in their efficiencies, they bring in the softer skills that are so often required, and we've seen that being beneficial in companies. Yes, but it does happen. We need to support them.
So what do you do in particular? I have to ask this question to all of you because you really are in a unique position where you actually are capable of bringing about change in your companies. So how are you helping, especially the young women who say, I'm not really sure. Maybe I would like to, but I'm afraid. And again, there's that fear of failure. People will say, okay, look at her, after 6 months, she's already gone. Like, she took up this management position, and after 6 months, we no longer see her because she wants to have a baby. I mean, these are things that are being said. Sometimes even people who do get pregnant, like, you're kind of afraid of telling your boss because it's like, okay, how are they gonna react? And we know the reaction is like, oh, that's so nice, but okay, but that's sad for us. And when are you coming back? That's always the second question that comes right away. When are you coming back? So how are you particularly helping women to feel like they can bring something to the table, regardless of their family situation?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that once again, Liz. So as a corporation, as Covestro, we are doing 2 or 3 things. First and foremost, which is not so much the structural side of it, but let's say the people side of it, mentorship and sponsorship. We do believe that high caliber individuals, whether men or women, especially women, do need that mentorship and sponsorship, and they need to be encouraged. Secondly, we are partnering with organizations outside. We've set in place many, many ambitious goals. The minute you set yourself ambitious goals in terms of women in the workforce, Covestro has said 40% of the workforce will be women. You are, in a way, compelled to act on that. And that compelling nature of that act means that in addition to sponsorship and mentorship, in addition to fulfilling those roles, in addition to then having programs such as Compass. Compass is something which got started by our US colleagues and is really grounded on the equity principle and the equivalence principle. We are helping women in everyday activities as well as in a longer-term development plan to make sure that they don't opt out the way I talked about earlier. Role models also help. Not asking the pressurized questions also helps. And in addition, I think as you get quorum of diverse women within that women workforce coming in and enduring a fantastic successful career and a fantastic successful personal life, I think it starts working.
I see you nodding, Sarena. Yeah, do you want to add to that?
For sure. I think as Sue said, right, I think as corporations, we have tremendous responsibility and opportunity to try to break the bias. So you might know that at Bayer, we set a very ambitious target that by 2030, we want to reach gender parity of our managerial levels. But for us to do that, in addition to what Sue said, is we got to make sure that our managers, especially our male managers, are equipped with be able to have those conversations and creating the psychological safe environment for those conversations to happen. So whether it's unconscious bias training, whether it's continued dialogue, what does it mean to create psychological safety? What does it mean to have very open conversations without judgment? Those are kind of dialogues and conversations that we need to continue to have. And we're happy to say that at Bayer, more than 50% of our managers over the last 2 years have gone through unconscious bias training. We have to continue to do that, to make sure that, because this is a skill set, it's a muscle that we all need to build up, and we need to do more of that. And at the same time, I think as we also talked about, building the confidence among our female colleagues to know that they need to also have the ability to have those conversations, to know their own career path, to know where they can grow and support. And again, I think one of the things that we continue to do here at Bayer is along those lines. How do we make sure that females get the sponsorship, get the local community support, get the support of our business resource group in here we call GROW, that has chapters among all our major countries that create those kind of dialogues and opportunities for growth. So I think it really comes both ways. Leaders need to step up creating that environment, and all of us as female employees feel that we have that safe environment to be able to contribute. And I think that's how we can eventually move the dialogue on this.
All right, so creating that positive environment is really important. Stephanie, is there anything you want to add to that? Because earlier you had already told us the steps that are being taken at LANXESS, but is there anything that you are doing apart from that?
No, I mean, for me, it's really a combination of structural changes you implement within the company for designing recruiting processes, for setting up KPI figures, for for the groups so that everybody knows where he or she stands, that he or she can work on it. For me, that's really crucial to make people aware of that there is a need to do something. That's first, that's the structural part, I would say. And on top of that comes for me really the taking ownership of those that are already in leadership positions. Yeah, as you said, Sarena, we are the role models and we have the responsibility, and that is not only female, but that's also men, to really speak up and encourage people. And I always say, and I have had situations like you described, where you were sitting there and were just not knowing what to do next because you had that much on your table, the kids waiting at home, that it's just a certain period within your life, and that continues, and you will make a career decision for really a very long period and not just a tiny bit. And that you should always bear in mind as a female leader.
Now, the issue of gender parity has come up. It is a very controversial subject here in Germany. There are some quotas for example, companies that are traded on the stock exchange, for them to have a certain number of women on their boards of management. You have to have at least one woman. If you have 4 members of the board, then one has to be a woman, but only 13% of the people that are on these management boards are actually women. So I want to hear your opinion. Quotas for women, yes or no? Sarena, because you had started with gender parity and the aims that you have at Bayer, I want to start with you.
Yeah, no, happy to share my view on this. I think quota, first of all, I will speak for myself and I will ask my friends here to chime in. Nobody wants to be considered to be a quota. I think that's very, very clear. Right? A quota, I think, implies that this person doesn't necessarily have the competency or the merit that deserve a job. And I think it's really important for us to clarify what that means. Quota, however, I believe is call it a necessarily means to potentially a very good end. Right? Because it creates a dialogue, creates a space that we're having right now to say, let's talk about this. Is quota a good or bad thing? But more importantly, why are we having this conversation, right? Because ultimately, we know that inclusion and diversity is important for the business success. We know it is important for talent, regardless male or female, to be successful. And having something as quota creates that kind of space for that dialogue. But more importantly, I think above and beyond the quota question is really for all companies, Bayer, LANXESS, Covestro, as well as all the companies, to really look deep inside and say, how much do we believe in the why of inclusion and diversity? Why are we doing this? We're not doing this for the sake of quota, right? We're doing this because we truly believe that this is a business imperative to create that environment so that we have diversity of experiences, diversity of thought, and we leverage the best talent there is out there. So I think that belief has to be strong to overcome the negativity of quota itself.
So is that actually a step that is being taken to kind of force companies to take action and organizations to take action because they haven't been doing that? I mean, your company, Bayer, has a history that it has been there for more than 150 years. You're only the second woman to be on the board of management, so they need that kind of push, really, to see that you can't only have men on these boards.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say, personally, I'm extremely honored to be invited to be on the board of Bayer. The reception I've gotten both from my board colleagues as well as from all the colleagues from the company has been tremendous. And to me, this is really important sign for me, that the company is not only ready, but really are embracing the change. Now, I think to be clear, we know change is hard, and we have to meet the society and the organization where it is. And for us, setting that very ambitious goal of gender parity by 2030, we have an 8-point plan of how we get there and be able to start making progress toward that step by step is probably the most critical thing for us to do. Of course, there will be challenges in terms of having conversations about, how do we make this truly equal for everyone, regardless of man or woman? Are people losing out because of this? And those are the dialogues we have to face into, because the dialogue is what creates the understanding of why this is an important topic for us, instead of shying away from it. So overall, personally, I'm being very impressed by how Bayer has approached this topic and me having the seat at the table, be able to continue to drive the dialogue and lead this conversation. So I'm really looking forward to us being able to achieve our goals over time.
Sucheta, you also have a seat at the table. Talk to us about your opinion of this women quota, and maybe you can give us also an insight into what things look like in different countries, because you also have international experience. So is this only something that we are talking here about in Germany, or is this an issue also in other countries?
Yeah. So a bit like what Sarena said, and I'm also borrowing from some of the comments that Stephanie had made earlier, but specific to the point of quota. I'll give you my personal view, Liz, and then maybe move to what we need to address at hand. Exactly like what Sarena said, that word quota, and when you address it to minorities, and the minorities could be a gender minority, it could be a nationality minority, it could be a skill set minority, it could be anything. The word quota, and you talked about biases earlier, does have a negative connotation.
Yeah.
And to that extent, I am skeptical about the word quota and the negativities associated with it. Because at the end of the day, it furthers some of those negativities. It furthers some of that imposter syndrome. You know, am I here only because of a quota? Or am I really here, you talked of the seat at the table, am I here at the seat of the table really because of the value and the skill set I bring to the situation or the problem at hand? And therefore I move to the latter. If it is the latter, that is, I bring value, I bring a certain expertise, a certain experience, then that should be embraced. And that cultural shift that is required to embrace that is super critical.
But you may know and be sure of the fact that you bring the credentials that are needed, but then what if the colleagues just think that, okay, they needed one woman, so look, they brought in Sucheta. I mean, these are thoughts that people have.
Yes, I think both explicitly and sometimes not so explicitly, these may be the thoughts that people have. And back to the point of what's required. If it's a cultural shift, which it is, I strongly, strongly believe it is a cultural shift in many countries around the world. Some countries are further ahead, Norway, Denmark, China are further ahead. Some countries are not at the front runner. If we have to accelerate, if we have to have escape velocity, then I do believe that quotas are necessary. So not for the cultural shifts, but to get that escape velocity, it's a bit like a fuel in the car. You need that tank full of fuel to get to a certain speed to finish your journey. That journey isn't going to get finished if we don't have quotas. So skeptical though I am, negative associations notwithstanding, I think we need that for escape velocity. But, and there is a big but, the cultural shift, the true belief, the why, as Sarena put it, has to come out of small wins and big wins. We have to raise both the floor and the ceiling to break ahead. And quotas for that cultural shift is not the answer. So yes, it gets escape velocity, yes, it gets the fuel in the tank, but the larger bit is to do with a lot more shifting of attitudes, beliefs, and celebrating small and big wins.
Negative connotations that this phrase has have already been addressed. In Germany, there's this word which I really do not like, Quotenfrau, like you're the quota woman. You were just brought here because of the quota that exists. So Stephanie, I also want to get your take on whether we should have these quotas or not.
Yeah, I always strongly oppose against that connotation because I think it's tremendously unfair. If you ask me personally, I for a very long time was completely against quotas because I thought it's not necessary. But if I look at the speed with which we see changes, it's much too slow. So we really need to accelerate. And as you said, I really see the quota now as an accelerator for a shift that's absolutely necessary. And I always say it's not necessary just because we want that, and we want equality, we want equality. But I really see it as a economic necessity to bring that forward, really, in our society for creating the workforce potential for the future. So I really see it as the push we need in society. That this brings along lots of discussions and problems. I'm fully with you, Sue, because even hear now men saying, hey, we will be disqualified or disadvantaged if female are now pushed into leadership positions. But as you said, Sarena.
And then what do you tell these men?
I think there will be jobs for everyone. You only have to be good, and you only have to be qualified. Once this is the case, no worries for the future. That's my answer to it. And I strongly believe in that. For me, being a quota female is not a question of being not qualified. For me, that's not the opposite.
So
for me, it comes
you
along
can be
with,
both.
Yeah? You have to be both, because once you're only a quota female, that's a disaster, because you will fail. If you're put in a position just because you're female, you will definitely fail. Your surrounding will tell everybody, hey, this is a quota. You will start questioning yourself. You will not have the qualification to fill that position. So that will be a big fail. And that would be the biggest mistake you can do. So a quota always needs to come along with qualification, from my point of view.
I thank you for those strong views on that issue. I know it's a hot topic here in Germany, has been for a number of years and still is. Break the bias, that's the hashtag that we're using. That's the theme of this year's International Women's Day. And I had mentioned before, I'm mentioning it again because we are about to get directly to your questions, the comments that you have. So please, if you haven't written us anything, do that now. We still have a few minutes, and then I will get directly to your questions. Now, I want us to, we've already talked about why the way to get to really encourage women to be more proactive in seeking out jobs that they maybe feel like, okay, I want to be able to handle it, what companies need to do. Let's look into the future. Do you think that 10 years from now, we will be sitting here in the studio talking about, oh, there are these biases and women still haven't made it as far as they would have wanted to? Or will there be a time where we say, okay, there's parity, there's equal opportunity, there's equality, and International Women's Day, it was nice to have you, but we no longer need you? What do you think? Just a short answer from all of you, and then I'll get to the questions. Yeah, I'll start with you, Stephanie.
I would hope that it would no longer be necessary. It's not that I would not love to sit here with you, but my bigger hope is that we really have the push into the development, into society, that things will change and that it's no longer necessary to do so.
Yeah. Sucheta?
Well, I draw encouragement from the fact that the three of us in somewhat competitor companies are able to sit like this together and talk about this issue, because we are not in competition with each other on this issue. On this issue, we stand really solidly together.
Yes.
Because that's how the floor gets raised, that's how the ceiling gets raised. And therefore, I'm hugely confident if the three of us from seemingly competitor companies able to join hands to address this issue, then as a larger village, as a larger population, as a larger country, we will be able to address it. And hopefully in 10 years' time, we'll be talking about other biases and other factors that we need to address with escape velocity.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Sarena, what about you?
I'm hoping for the same thing, right? That 10 years from now, we no longer have to sit here and talking about breaking bias and talking about quotas. But I suspect that the road probably will continue to be rocky, because we're talking about mindset changes, we're talking about skills building, we're talking about addressing some of the systems issues that I think many companies are still facing. So I think this is going to be a journey that we have to continue to be on, and but do celebrate small wins. I think for all of us to be able to start talking about having these conversations here is a win, right? That means we are creating the space that we just talked about, of having the conversations about the pros and cons of it, and be able to hopefully send a message to all our colleagues out there, male or female, of what does it mean to own your career? What does it mean to have these conversations? What does it mean to sort of temper your own self-doubt? And hopefully also messages to the corporations that it is time, right? If you haven't done so already, start addressing these, right? So 10 years from now, hopefully these conversations already progress to a level where we can indeed talk about something else.
Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to your questions. So now is the time for me to see what you have been writing, and I hope that I'll get to as many questions as possible. All right, we do have one. Now, I can tell you what we do have, Q&A, questions and answers. I'm going to get directly to the first question to save time. So we have one question from Annie. Hello, Annie. Thanks for tuning in. Annie is asking Sarena and Shoo, what challenges do you see in getting more women of color in higher positions? What can be done to help them?
Wow, I'm sure that some of you have heard that not only, I think, being the double or triple minorities that some of us have, not only we have a glass ceiling, for Asian, there is something called a bamboo ceiling.
What is that?
A bamboo ceiling is basically the biases that the society have on Asian. The Asians are typically supposedly good in science and math, but not necessarily good in networking and interpersonal skills, let alone leadership.
Yeah.
Right? So that's that bamboo ceiling or the bias against Asians in a nutshell. So I think, at least my personal experience, and I'd love to hear Shoo's, is indeed, right, it is probably double or triple the challenge for us, but I think the way to address it is still the same, right? It is what we talked about. It is multiple sides. It is us building our own self-confidence that we can do the job. It's continue to make sure that we create our own mindset, right? That is right for what we need to do. It is continue to work with corporations and companies that support talent like us, right? And it is also for those of us who are in the position to change, to create that kind of open platform, right? In terms of addressing biases, making sure that there are career development opportunities for people regardless of gender, ethnicity, right? So yes, the challenges are real, and I would only send a strong message out there, don't give up, right? This is a continued conversation we need to have, whether you're male, female, Asian, non-Asian, we got to be on this road together.
Thank you. So, Sucheta, you're originally from India. Is there some type of ceiling that is particular to people of Indian origin that we don't know about?
Well, there are country biases, there are cultural biases, there are factors that come in. Yes, women of color, yes, skill set, yes, traveling, yes, moving continents on a job, and trailer spouses and follower spouses, and all of that does come in. But I have to echo what Sarena said out here. To all the colleagues out there, please don't give up. This is something that we have to, join hands and battle together. For me, an ideal state is one of equivalence and equity, where organizations can, as broadly as possible, reflect the demographic dividend that exists out there. And if that happens, I'll be supremely happy. So yeah, let's join hands on that one.
All right. Thank you very much. I have another question from Saskia. She is asking, which advice would you give on how to react to the question, do you want to have kids in the future, in a job interview? No matter if in a direct way or in an indirect way. She says, I'll graduate from my PhD in chemistry soon, and I'm afraid of getting judged in a job interview on this topic. Stephanie, I need your expertise.
There are several ways of answering. I would always say, would you ask that question to a man as well, who could take care of the kids in the future? So that would be my advice, to address it openly.
But don't you think it will come across as rude? I mean, if you really want that job,
rude already. It is rude, yeah. And I think you need to make people aware of that it's rude, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I to build on Stephanie's point, if I were sitting on the other side of the table being asked that question, I would answer very honestly, of course I want to have my family. Do you have a family too? And by the way, I'm curious, why do you ask that question? Right? Because I think, remember, as talents, you have a choice of which company you join, right? So if a company already come with that kind of bias that, gosh, if you're going to have child, you're not going to be successful in my company, most likely this is not the right company for you, right? So hold firm with your principles, right, and what you believe in. If you believe family is important for you, then you absolutely should be true to yourself. Because to me, part of the bias is you gotta be true to yourself, right? That's the only way to be successful. So I get very passionate about this because I think those are exactly the kind of dialogue that we need to have out there to make sure that talents understand you have a choice. You have a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a very powerful message. Thank you for that. Sarah, we have a question from Sarah. Sarah wants to know, when coming back from maternal leave, there is no guarantee that you return on the same job position. I don't know which country you are writing from, Sarah, because there are some countries, for example, in Germany, if you have a permanent contract, then you do have a guarantee of getting back to that position. Therefore, what is your recommendation if a woman wants to keep their position after maternal leave? Sucheta.
So before I come to a direct answer, firstly, Liz, you're absolutely correct. Some countries, you're already guaranteed that contractually. But let's move away from the contract, because I suspect this is less about contractual obligations. I will use anecdotes, because I think partly it's also what our experiences are. I remember when I was going off on my maternity leave and my first son was expected, so that was many, many years ago, almost 3 decades ago. My then manager, as I was leaving, said, not when are you coming back, that wasn't the question I was asked, but just said, just remember that you add so much value that we will miss you each day that you are out of the office. And I tell you, that's huge motivation per se. It's also a message to people around you in the organization that the value you add has to be assigned to a particular fantastic role and opportunity. So, people just get it, and thanks to that manager. The second bit is also being explicit. Maybe as you're going on leave, and maternity is not the only leave, there some people go off on leave for other reasons, caring for elderly parents. Maybe there's a spouse that they need to, maybe there's a child, maybe there are other geographic locations. Just being explicit about what you'd like to return to, and what you need as help to support you in doing a particular role. So I think guarantees in today's day and age, unless contractually done, sometimes are possible, sometimes are not possible, but that's not to say that you can't come back to an absolutely fantastic role where your value is truly appreciated.
What I'm hearing from the answers that all the three of you are giving, and that I believe is a very strong message, is that we need to be very vocal and very clear about what we want. And I think maybe that is something, if I just examine myself, it is something that I don't often do, because maybe of traditional issues that I believe that maybe it is rude, like how will I come across like somebody who wants to advance their career. So really thank you for giving those very important tips. Another question here. I have to see. All right. We have one question from Kiana. Kiana, that question goes to Sarena and Sucheta. Do you have a female role model to look up to in your career, and how do you think it has affected you? I'm asking for brief answers here because we're almost running out of time.
I will start. Actually, no. During my professional career, I almost have no female role models. But I think this is actually an important message as well. A role model does not need to be female or male. I have had tremendous sponsors and mentors. Most of them are men throughout my career who have gave me the confidence that I can do what I'm capable of. And I think this is a critical piece for also all the women and men out there. Look for role models in people who believe in you, regardless of gender. And I will also have a call to action to everyone, again, male or female, be the role models for other people, pull other people up, because many, many people do need that kind of confidence and need that kind of sponsorship.
Thank you. Sucheta.
Yeah, Sarena said it so beautifully that I'd only like to build by saying, yes, I've had role models. No, they've not always been female. They've been role models in what I wanted them to be role models of, both male and female, and some of them have been personal in my personal networks, where I've looked at them and said, they've set out to do what they really, really wanted to do, and what have they done around them that has helped me?
And were these people that you could also go to for advice, or were they just people you admired from afar?
No, I think I could, with a lot of them, go forth and being explicit about doubts, vulnerabilities, fears, asks, advice, and sometimes I got it nicely, and sometimes I got a swift kick on my backside, but yeah, they were role models, definitely.
All right, thank you very much. Another question, this time from Larissa. Larissa Merkel says, what is your advice to female leaders on how to best activate and encourage male leaders to embrace female empowerment, to support it from the heart, and not feel scared? You had already hinted at an answer before, so now if you can directly answer to this question from Larissa, please.
Yeah, I think the situation is much easier for someone who has a daughter of his own, because he always sees someone grow to encourage that point. But from my perspective, there's a lot of good things also for men to support female, because that brings really attributes and additions to the team that are very strong. Also a
Can
male
you give
leader,
some examples?
Also a male leader will very much profit from having a diverse team. So that is, sometimes men think they cannot speak openly about their fatherhood, or that they would like to take care of the kids. If you have a diverse team, that becomes much easier. So that's one thing of profiting also from that type of situation, or speaking up. That would be one example that comes to my mind, and there would be much more to give. So I think that there's really lots of benefits in also for men to sponsor women.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. I'm just kind of rushing through the questions here so that we get through most of the questions that we have. We only have like 4 minutes left. All right, Sylvia is asking, research data shows that working women, especially those with care duties, have suffered a high impact from the pandemic, COVID-19. How do you think that new ways of working and hybrid work models, which are now being developed by many organizations, may help to improve inclusion in the workforce? Who wants to answer? I'm just going to give the opportunity to one person.
I'm happy to take a shot at it. I think we at Bayer are thinking about how do we return to work. And I think ensuring equity and diversity is a critical part of the equation. Because I think as this particular listener specifically Sylvia said, I think we see the benefit of hybrid model. We see the benefit of mobile working. And one concern that some of us have is indeed, once we start going into this hybrid model, more female will decide to opt out of the physical presence, okay, of coming back to the office. So again, it comes back to the leaders and corporations. How do we ensure that we still create that equity that we actually enjoy in doing the virtual presence, where we all show up in the little same square, right? That it's no longer back to the old FaceTime, where males or people who show up in the office have more FaceTime and therefore get more sponsorship. And this goes back to building that leadership muscle and awareness to say, hybrid working comes with its opportunities and challenges, and we absolutely need to make sure that diversity of thought and equal opportunity for sharing information is still there.
Right, thank you very much. Aisenur, I hope I did pronounce that name correctly, is asking, what would be your advice to young women professionals at the very early stage of their careers? Now, I don't know what exactly this user wants to know, but if you have general advice, Stephanie?
I would say choose a mentor and a sponsor, and look for opportunities to expose yourself.
So you need to
become visible. Yeah, take action, absolutely.
Yeah. How important is visibility at your...
Visibility is important. Being explicit is incredibly important. And wow, what a bonus if you could get a fantastic sponsor as well. So don't be shy of that. Don't absolutely be shy.
Can we, in the last 2 minutes that we have, can you just talk about this issue of sponsorship? Because people who don't work for corporations, maybe they're not very much aware of what you mean exactly when you say look for a sponsor.
So for me, very simply, kind of in layperson's term, sponsorship is somebody who, when you're not in the room, when you're physically not there, is able to say, have you considered this person for the role? Have you considered this particular skill set and this person? I think this person would be fantastic. So if I had to, talk about sponsorship for myself, these are people, when I've not been in the room, when I've not been on the scene, millions of miles away have said, Sue is right for this role, or have you considered this because this is what she brings to the party? And that's what sponsorship does.
Perfect. I'm going away with a lot of ideas from this talk. Okay, the last question, the last opportunity goes to Sarah. Sarah wants to know, many successful men say that they have a woman behind them keeping their back free. So do you need a supportive man in your back if you want to be a successful woman? Or is it possible for both men and women to make a successful career? Whoever wants to answer is allowed to answer, but just one person, please.
I'm happy to take it. So yes, I've been very, very fortunate because I have a wonderful partner and my husband who supports me from home. By the way, I have also many friends who have successful dual career at home, right? So I don't think that's one model that fits all. But the key is that you have to find a model that works for you. If you need a support network, talk to your partner. Make sure you find the right solution that works for you as a unit.
Yeah. Thank you very much. We have to end it here. I would have loved to talk to you really for another couple of hours, but unfortunately we only have this 1 hour that has been allocated to us for this talk. But the conversation does continue online. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, then keep the conversation going. Really use this opportunity to network with other people that you have seen that did tune in today. And of course, you can see the people that are the participants and the speakers of this discussion. Maybe you can also use LinkedIn to really get directly in touch, and you might actually be able to get some tips or to have your questions answered if they were not answered today. I want to give a big thank you to my participants today. It really was a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you, Sue. And thank you, Sarena. And a big thank you to everybody who tuned in and sent in their questions. This was Break the Bias today on International Women's Day. We were talking about biases that women face, especially at the workplace, and how to overcome them. My name is Liz Shoo. Thank you very much for watching and have a good time.